told the staff at the White House today that our consensus among House Republicans is that we need to bifurcate those issues. I agree with your assessment in Ukraine, and that's why the American people are demanding some real accountability for the use of those dollars. Now, we can't allow Vladimir Putin to prevail in Ukraine because I don't believe it would stop there, and it would probably encourage and empower China to perhaps make a move on Taiwan. We have these concerns. We're not going to abandon them, but we have a responsibility, a stewardship responsibility over the precious treasure of the American people. And we have to make sure that the White House is providing the people with some accountability for the dollars. And we want.
Welcome Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. It is Free Will and Friday, so don't forget to get your questions in. Laura will grab them, throw them in the chat. Now we'll try to answer as many as possible by the end of the show. All right, if you like the videos, don't forget to like them. Of course, like them. Hit the little subscribe button. All right. Give it a thumbs up. Do what you do. Rumble, give it a little plus. All right. Definitely the best place, of course, to follow us if you like our work is Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. I played that first because there's a couple of things I want to pull out of it. There's a lot of questions. I've been watching quietly on Twitter for the last couple of days, and there were people who very clearly liked Mike Johnson and now have learned some things about Mike Johnson that they didn't like maybe, or he said some stuff. Let me just put this as clear as I can. There is no way with the Republican conference that anybody was going to be elected speaker to the House with just a Republican vote. Without that speaker giving some kind of an assurance that the effort in Ukraine, all of the billions and billions and billions of dollars, which you know how I feel about it. You know how I feel because it's the way the American people feel about it. They weren't going to let that all go to waste. All right. So whether it was Jim Jordan or whomever it was, which they opposed for the sake of spiting, the people who basically launched this effort. Mike Johnson was not the kind of guy they could keep this up with. So they eventually capitulated, they being, I'm going to name soon, but there was no way Ukraine was not going to be part of any kind of an agreement to get a Republican speaker elected. If you don't like that and you're a Republican, then you have to vote for somebody else in a primary. You have to decide that maybe you can raise money in your district. Maybe your incumbent is vulnerable. Maybe you're a viable, of course, you have to be a viable candidate. But, Republicans can't just sit there on the sidelines anymore. And since 2020, they've been better at this. There's just no doubt. But they can't sit on the sidelines and expect the people who have been elected to the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, which is even worse, to carry out their will or to represent them. They are not those people. They're not the people for the time the Republican voter thinks we're living in. So something has to be done about that. Otherwise, you're going to end up, as it looks like right now, if the election was today, you're going to end up with a Trump presidency, and best case scenario for Republicans, maybe a small majority in the Senate, maybe at this point. But there are a bunch of squishes who could even be worse than 2017. And then if you were to even see the Republican Party hold on to the majority in the House, it would be a weak one with a bunch of weak-willed, spineless cowards and crooks. I mean, I've been saying this for years, and I think a lot of people just, because I'm looking at how they react to some of the things Mike Johnson said, and I'm a little bit surprised why they would react that way. Don't you know what the conference is? Like, I just don't understand why anyone acts surprised. Mike Johnson is an upgrade from Speaker McCarthy. If you are MAGA, he's an upgrade. And this guy once called for Pelosi to be charged for ripping up the State of the Union address. All right. It's a felony. And he's like, charge her with a felony. Kevin McCarthy was not Paul Ryan. Speaker McCarthy, or I would say Paul Ryan wasn't even John Boehner, but he turned out to be pretty crappy too. But Speaker McCarthy was an upgrade from both those two men. And Mike Johnson is an upgrade, if you're MAGA, from Kevin McCarthy, who really doesn't have an ideology. Kevin was decent on some of the stuff with Trump, but he did not keep his promises. So that's why he left himself exposed and they derailed him. Now, if you're Speaker Johnson, you have to worry about your position. It's a very tenable position. Or tenuous position, I would say. You are not going to be able to please all of these different factions, and you can end up ruined being the Speaker of the House and today's Republican Speaker of the House. That's just the facts. You're not going to have enough votes to do what even you want to do. Because if you look at Mike Johnson's record, his own voting record, I mean, that there's never been a Speaker of the House more in touch with the base. Never. But he doesn't have just the base. He doesn't have 220 other Mike Johnsons. He doesn't even have 218 other Mike Johnsons or 216 other Mike Johnsons. He's got to deal with what he's got. And now he's in a kind of dangerous position. Now, let's listen to what he said again. And I'm just going to bring up the first part because I don't want to stop and discuss what he says. We're going to bifurcate the spending with Ukraine and Israel and everything else. And then he wants accountability, which is why Mike Johnson's score from that stupid tracker that basically tracks democracy votes. Ukraine's not a democracy. What are you talking about? Ukraine is an authoritarian, crooked regime run by corrupt and disgusting oligarchs who traffic in young women and guns for a living. What the hell are you talking about? But anyway, I digress. There's no freedom of religion. They're going after the church. I'm sorry, I'm not digressing. I'm not. There's no freedom of religion. There's no freedom of the press. You get shut down if you're adversarial to Vladimir Zelensky. There's no political opposition. You get thrown in jail, just like the United States now, apparently. And Argentina. Tone from the top matters. You can't be the beacon of democracy, the shining city on the hill. Throw your political opposition in jail and expect the rest of the world not to follow. Can't do it. Now, by the way, we're going to read one of Biden's internal polling memos, and or it's a group that's really polling for them. It's incredible because they actually use the word coup in the polling memo, and I'm thinking to myself, January 6th was a coup. Crossfire Hurricane was a coup. That's a coup. I don't remember Donald Trump trying to put, the incoming president in prison or ordering the military to seize power of government buildings. He did not use the administrative state to maintain power. There was a protest. A protest in which nobody got hurt and nobody was armed other than the police officer who shot an unarmed female and killed her. One who served our country, a veteran. But this is the dichotomy. It has shifted dramatically. Anyway, back on topic. Second thing that Mike Johnson is going to bring up about this is I want you to listen carefully. Book club, if you've been in the Locals book club, by the way, peoplespundit.locals.com. The very first book we read was Jack, right? Yeah, we went with a defensive realist first. Jack Snyder, Myths of Empire. And even though Jack Snyder's a realist, he tried to add, and this is what I think his great contribution is. He tried to add the political coalition explanation. Domestic coalition politics is what it is, right? What it's really called. He tried to add that to the view, the school of realism, which doesn't normally provide an answer domestically about why states do what they do and adopt the foreign policy they do. Defensive, offensive realism is about the international system, and there are general assumptions about the international system that states act rationally. Rational does not mean they make smart decisions. That's not the same thing. So don't misunderstand. But traditionally, realists just don't provide a domestic explanation for why states do what they do. They would say Adolf Hitler's Germany would act just the same as a so-called democratic Germany or a Weimar Republic or whatever it may be. They're going to generally, you can expect them to act roughly the same. And Jack Snyder disagreed with that. And he said, look, I'm still a realist, but I got a couple of different alternative explanations I think I want to put forward. They're very, very much worth exploring. I don't subscribe to them myself. I mean, just full disclosure, I'm an offensive realist like John Mearsheimer. I do think that Jack Snyder's great contribution to international relations theory and security studies is his identification really exposed them, but his identification and the role they play of what he calls myths of empire. All right. And you're going to hear, sadly, because myths of empire, they're tragic. They lead to states overusing resources, overexpanding, overreaching, and collapsing. So superpowers or great powers, whatever it may be, it leads great powers to making stupid decisions that inevitably lead to either their downfall or a weakened state or weakened position in the international system, right? And for those who don't know, the international system is what we live in right now. There are, despite the fact that there's no UN, I mean, there is a UN, there's no 911. The UN doesn't work like a global police. So we live in an international state of anarchy, and security competition is what is what governs. That's like the law of the universe, basically. And every state is trying to gain relative power, typically, usually, at someone else's expense. That's why it's relative. And outcomes there, war is just a strategy. There are many strategies to gain more power. And then there are other theories in international relations, which sadly have governed for most of the 20th and early 21st century, have governed, with the exception of Donald Trump. That's it. We had some periods in the 20th century, like Richard Nixon with détente. That was realism at play. Very smart. Great move. Statesman. But most of it is governed by crap, right? So the halls of the State Department are filled with people who couldn't make it in academia. They're a bunch of morons, all right? They get laughed at, which is ironic because the left dominates these positions of power, and they typically dominate academia, but they do not in this field. And that's one of the great ironies. It's the only, I think, policy position where we could see, or area of policy, domestic or foreign, where we see that. And on the right, they have their own dumb schools of thought, like neoconservatism, which really came from the left, and they've blended recently with neoliberalism. But there's this idea that's been hanging around. It got a lot of prominence in the, I would say before Clinton. It just grabbed a hold under Bill Clinton, but it was even under Herbert Walker Bush. Which is the idea that democracies war less with each other. That's why you constantly hear people try to peg Ukraine as a democracy. They want you to see Ukraine as a democracy. They want you to think that that's true. And in fact, it is not. And the democratic peace theory is a flop. Bruce Russell was laughed out of his thesis defense. He's a joke. But where do you take a failed thesis? You take it to Washington, D.C. And lo and behold, sadly, it's the only place on planet Earth where a stupid idea could become the foundation of the entire foreign, any establishment for decades and decades. And that's what we've been dealing with. And he said something that concerns me. A lot of the stuff about we're not going to abandon Ukraine, I'm going to bifurcate, doesn't really make me, a red flag does not go off in my head about how he was using those words, because I'm trying to keep you being realistic about this. He doesn't have the votes to do what he himself would do. However, there are two things about the interview with Sean Hannity that did concern me. And before I play it again, the first thing that concerned me is that he was on Sean Hannity. Period. Full stop. Sean Hannity is not the face of conservatism anymore. He's not the face of the new right. He's not even in the general consensus when it comes to foreign policy. He goes way out on left field on a lot of things. The roots of his support for the Iraq war are still there. You can hear them in almost everything he says. So this idea that, he's full-blown America first now, you can hear that is a load of crap. How do you know? Anytime there's some kind of moralism is injected in a foreign policy, that's when you hear the real truth come out from people. All right. Foreign policy shouldn't be about morals. There are no good guys. There's only you, your allies, and everybody else. There's only you and your vital national security interests. And the only question is whether something is worth expending the blood and treasure on, because it is a threat to your vital security interests. Things that are going on right now are not. And give some money to the Israelis to fight back Hamas, fine. What they really need from the U.S. is not moralism in their foreign policy, but moralism in their tone. I guess. Listen, they have a right to destroy Hamas. End of story. Full stop. And that's it. They need somebody to just back them. Israel never needed boots on the ground like Zelensky is going and has. Look, he already has boots on the ground. If you have ODAs telling you how to fire these weapon systems or operate these weapon systems, that's boots on the ground. Green Berets don't count. Special operators don't count as boots. Did they wear slippers out there? Those are boots. Anyway, the first part is that he even went on somebody like Hannity. I remember it almost felt like, and oh God, I really hate to do this to Mike, but I got to tell the truth. It felt like the interview that Paul Ryan did with Sean Hannity after not that he was elected, after Donald Trump was elected, and then they talked about Trump's first 100 days as an all-encompassing Republican agenda. What's your agenda for the first 100 days now that you have the gavel with a Republican president? We have a Republican Senate. What is your agenda? And Paul Ryan went on to talk about repealing health care and how there was just great consensus within the conference to repeal and replace Obamacare. And of course, they failed. And Paul Ryan went on to make all of these promises about immigration, how they were going to work with Donald Trump on immigration. And even, you know what, I do think there's some areas in infrastructure we could work on. It was all a lie. The biggest lie of all is that they ever had a consensus to repeal and replace Obamacare. There was there were hints of those tones in this interview, which is not good. And that answers the first question that came up with me. Why would you even go on Sean Hannity? Who cares about Sean Hannity? Well, you would if you needed an opportunity to give an interview like Paul Ryan got. That kind of opportunity. Safe space. Softballs. Unbelievable. Anyway, let's play it, and then I want to talk again more about this. Republicans cannot let poisonous foreign policy back in their party. Not the mainstream thinking, anyway. More and more of these people have got to be removed and replaced, or they'll never represent their base. Worse still, forget about just the base. They will never win the truly persuadable voters in certain areas of the country that they need to win in order to build a national coalition that's capable of winning majorities in the U.S. Senate. Forget about the House. That can always be done, as Newt Gingrich showed us. It's just, well, not always, but a lot of this, even when one party has a period of one-party dominance, can be done at certain times. But the Senate and the presidency, because of the Electoral College, very, very different. And if they want to be the party that can win and keep majorities in the Senate and win an Electoral College victory without getting boxed out the way that it was headed in the Mitt Romney era, but pre-Mitt Romney era, really from the Bush to Romney Republican era, Republicans had a very narrow path in the Electoral College. It's one that basically, if you're playing a game of poker, folks, you have to pull a royal straight flush every time. That's not likely. So it's either try to do that over and over again or change the map completely. Well, the only way you can change the map is if you change your party. Or go back to its roots, I would argue. I would argue, go back to its roots. But there's that task is not done. And it really would not benefit that task or benefit the goal at all to have a speaker who's going to start pumping out crap like this. Again, listen, book club folks, come on now. I'm going to check the comments and locals in a little bit. I fully expect you to get this. I fully expect you to hear this. In fact, I fully expect that you heard it before I brought it up. And you heard it when he gave this interview. All right, let's play it again. 36 seconds. I'm going to shut up and and let you guys
I
listen.
told the staff at the White House today that our consensus among House Republicans is that we need to bifurcate those issues. I agree with your assessment in Ukraine, and that's why the American people are demanding some real accountability for the use of those dollars. Now, we can't allow Vladimir Putin to prevail in Ukraine because I don't believe it would stop there, and it would probably encourage and empower China to perhaps make a move on Taiwan. We have these concerns. We're not going to abandon them, but we have a responsibility, a stewardship responsibility over the precious treasure of the American people. And we have to make sure that the White House is providing the people with some accountability for the dollars. And we want to.
All right, let's listen to the comments. Let's go back. Thank you, Jerry Spider. You have it. And he said, no, I'm not even part of the book club. But you are a member of Locals or a supporter. And I can't be a member and look at the book club. You can be a member on YouTube. This is why I get confused all the time. You could be a member on YouTube and have one of the election basic or higher tier memberships on YouTube, or you could just become a supporter of Locals. And even if you're not participating in the book club, which is Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Eastern Daylight Time, even though I am trying to work to fix that, we're just going to have a lot of kids competitions get in the way in the upcoming months. And I don't want to keep missing book clubs every time there's a competition for one of my kids. So I'm trying to figure out if there's a night during the week we would be able to do this. And I don't want to steal people's Friday nights, but you don't have to be there at the time in the book club to do it. All right. So all you have to do is basically read the books that we're reading, or just participate later. Go back and watch. There's always an archived record recording that we put up from the Zoom meeting, and you don't need the book even. You could follow along on the book club. We read aloud and we talk about it. You can follow along and just kind of look at it, and you would know the answer to this. Jerry or Spider knows it. I see other people got it as well. It's the domino theory. I got Laura right now looking for my copy of Jack Snyder. I didn't expect to do it, but the domino theory is bogus. And it got us in a lot of conflicts, peripheral and otherwise, that spent a lot of blood and treasure that really is unnecessary. It wasn't vital to the national security interest after all. And it would not, people generally know what a domino theory is, all right? Outside of Jack Snyder, I'm putting it toward what it means, but what Mike Johnson said was, I don't want, of course I don't want Putin to win, because I think it won't end there, he said. And it'll set off a series of events, basically, that will lead to the fall of Taiwan. All right. Now, there are certainly events in foreign policy that lead to other events. There are certainly events that lead, not because of domino theory, but lead other nation states and leaders to make a rational decision based on an event that they saw happen. So, for instance, Biden, it's not that he left Afghanistan, it's how he left Afghanistan. Again, Richard Nixon knew. He didn't believe in the domino theory, Richard Nixon, not like they did back then, and not as we understand it today. He wanted to leave Vietnam, not with a bloody nose and two black eyes. He wanted to leave it honorably, even though it's a loss. But he wanted to leave it honorably so that she's got it. My girl. He wanted to leave it honorably, so basically we could stop wasting blood and treasure in a war that wasn't ever really going to wasn't ever going to amount to anything. And worse still, people who say, well, if we don't stop them if we don't stop the Russians in Vietnam, they're going to keep coming. That's a load of crap. Why is it a load of crap? Because those other nation states only have finite amount of resources themselves. All right. So generally, before I get here we go. There we go. The theories of overexpansion. Okay. There it is. I'm trying to find the part where he laid it out in basic. All right, here's the domino theory right here. But, okay. Let me read before we get into what it is when it comes to foreign policy. The domino theory for anything is generally a theory that one event will set off a train of similar events, especially that they're similar events. And then the theory, here's more foreign policy. And you can look, I think it's American Heritage Dictionary, but the theory widely espoused during the Cold War that if one nation comes under communist control, then nearby nations will also come under communist control. And then another variation, any of various theories predicting that a sweeping political change in one nation will cause similar changes in nearby nations. So in the Cold War era, they thought that we had to stop them in Vietnam or else it would spread all through Asia, which then could end up closer to Eurasia and the Middle East and blah, 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 blah. And then the next thing you know, the world will be under Soviet domination and we'll have lost the Cold War. This is what you just heard Mike Johnson, and you'll hear Lindsey Graham when John McCain and his crusty thumb were still alive. You heard him say it almost every time he opened his crusty mouth. It's not true. States can go on a string, have a string of successes where it does seem that dominoes are falling and they're making gains, but they only have a finite amount of resources. And in truth, when you chase expansion like that anyway, even if you think the domino theory is working on your benefit, there comes a point when you hit that line. The line's invisible. You never know it. You never see it. And foreign policy makers, and that's one of the contributions from Jack Smith too. Jack Snyder? Why don't they ever see that line? It's the line of overexpansion. It's the point where Russia just spent too much, going too far. The United States, we overexpanded with the Iraq War. And we lost a lot of blood, a lot of treasure. We're significantly weaker than we were, as relatively speaking, to the rest of the nation states pre-Iraq War. We were far, far more dominant power-wise, military, latent, economic, everything. We were far more dominant before we invaded Iraq, before we decided to nation build in Afghanistan. Why? Because Rummy and all those folks believe in domino theory. They just twisted it in a weird way. If we don't stop them in the Taliban from harboring Iraq and Afghanistan, then eventually, you know what? That's going to take over in Pakistan. Yeah. Somehow, I don't know. It's going to let them take over the government in Pakistan. Maybe, that there could be. I mean, they let them hide in Islamabad all those years, and yet there weren't vast Al-Qaeda bases there. And the lie that got us into Iraq was that Saddam Hussein aided Al-Qaeda in the 9/11 attacks and was, in fact, one of the right targets for them to get WMDs from. And if we didn't stop this chain of events in the Middle East, it would all fall, and it would lead to, this domino theory that ended with a giant Osama bin Laden-led caliphate. I mean, it was crazy. Insane. Caliphates can happen. A caliphate can happen. We saw ISIS, but not in that sense. And again, ISIS only was, it wasn't even considered yet a nation state. So there we have it. So again, the thing that concerned me the most out of Mike Johnson's mouth was that's the domino theory. And we can't afford at this moment to fall for another domino theory. We don't have the money. We don't have the money. Look at the debt and deficits. Look at the debt clock. Last time we made this, we made these mistakes, we were in a position to make a quick mistake and then change course. But we're not in that position anymore, folks. We're not in that position at all. Look at this. I don't know when the last time it is that you visited this website, but I remember it was a super cool thing for conservatives and Tea Partiers to do when Barack Obama was president. It's fast approaching $34 trillion. Tax revenue is going down. Do you see it? Do you see it falling? The U.S. national debt to the left, that's increasing. Tax revenue is falling every second I'm talking right now. State revenue is rising, going up, going down. You have local revenue that is falling. If you watch it for a period of days, you'll see that it does gyrate a little bit. Gross domestic product is rising, but it's not rising fast enough, to be able to ever hope to raise enough money to pay off this debt. It's just not. It's not a viable It's not a viable situation. If we fell into another domino theory situation right now, it'd be the end of us. Domino theories have led, and it's not just, I mean, folks, it's not just modern era. Ancient civilizations to now, I mean, Egypt had 3 different kingdoms. It had periods throughout the 3 kingdoms, the old, the middle, and the new kingdom, in which they started to subscribe to some things that resemble domino theories. The pharaoh overextended, and they'd eventually have to retrench. Thank God they had just like this ridiculous amount of resources, and they had the Nile River. When you're an insular power, which is what we are, we're insular like Great Britain is insular. They are surrounded by vast bodies, even the English Channel, considered a formidable body of water, which I do believe, like others like John Mearsheimer, it hinders our enemy's ability to hurt us because of something called what Mearsheimer calls the stopping power of water. The way that we project power across the world is through the aircraft carrier fleet. But even with that, the stopping power of water still hinders our ability to project power as much as we would be able to if we weren't separated on 2 sides by vast oceans, vast bodies of water. And then on the north and the southern borders, we're still insulated because there are large other nation states that we dominate in the region. So they are not strong enough to be a burden to us or a threat to us. What they are is a great way to have a buffer between us and potential allies, because you would not be able to attack us without going through those weaker nations. So that makes us what's called an insular power. We are in a position with so much wealth and so much talent and so much technology and so much economic ingenuity. We have been gifted this opportunity. And so everyone says, this is isolationism, Rich. No, this is using your head and not being an idiot. Not having hubris that'll lead to your demise. It is not isolationism to take advantage of our incredible opportunity being an insular power with this much existing latent economic power at our fingertips. We should never be seeing the numbers you can see in your top left corner of your screen right now. That's mismanagement. There isn't some natural force that's causing that. That is mismanagement. That's rot. That's cultural rot. That's government corruption. That's political cowardice. That's a generation, unlike others, not having the character or the wisdom to be able to rise to the challenges of our particular epoch, of our era, when everyone else has been able to do it. That's this generation squandering not only the position in the international system, but the future of our generations, because we're not big enough to meet these challenges. It is mismanagement. And if Mike Johnson is going to come with the same old tired arguments, the domino theory here, this crap there, we have to fight him over there before we fight him over here. We'll be hearing that next. That's another myth of empire. If we're going to keep hearing it, what's the point? I mean, then what on earth is the point? So let me, you know what? I'm not even doing that to say it. I'm not even saying all this to make that, the end point of this conversation. I'm saying it all because, again, I do personally think he's doing his best, because look at this. Look at it. Look at it right in front of your face. It's unbelievable. I could be hypnotized by what I see mathematically. This is like math, the language of math, saying stupid. If I could translate what I'm seeing in all of these almost infinitely, but forever changing numbers and figures on the screen, it translates to stupid. And he really doesn't have a whole lot that he could do with this. Not yet. He's got, in truth, and I do think that he's a smart enough guy to understand the position we're in. I hope to God that was just him backed in a corner saying what, is acceptable, perfectly acceptable to say in Washington, D.C. In fact, that's what most people would think to say. Well, what about we can't let Ukraine win? I mean, that's not, we can't let Ukraine lose. That wouldn't be good. That's not good for anybody. The United States are our allies, right? And I don't think it would stop there. Putin doesn't have the resources to march on Poland. Where's it going? Where's it going? At least Mike had the, or Speaker Johnson, now you got to respect the gavel, Laura. At least Speaker Johnson had the, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was like political instincts or which it really could have been to understand. Let's pivot now to Taiwan. Let's make this more about Taiwan than where Russia will go after they take Ukraine. Russia's going to go nowhere after they take Ukraine. They're going to keep eastern Ukraine. If they advanced all the way to Kiev, they would probably retreat a little bit. Even if they wound up taking that territory, they would probably wind up retreating. Why? Because there's nothing there. It's not worth defending. You might as well, it's not even retreating, but you might as well, pull back, leave a little bit more of a buffer between you and the Western powers while you make sure that you have full grasp on the productive part of the country, the part of the country with the breadbasket, the part of the country with the shale deposits. That's just not in Western Ukraine. Western Ukraine has nothing. Western Ukraine is like a big joke, actually, to people who know the region, but it's like Eastern Ukraine produces, Western Ukraine lives off their hard work. Absurd, right? It's absolutely true. There's nothing that of real value that comes out of there. He's not going anywhere else. He's just going to pull back. So thankfully, at least Speaker Johnson at the time had the the wit to say, well, it could be about Taiwan. Listen, when the Chinese are ready to take Taiwan because they think we have here's another. The Chinese are going to take Taiwan when they're ready to take Taiwan. If it looks like Biden's going to go down, there's a higher, and it does. But I mean, as we get closer, if it looks like Biden's going to go down in flames in November 24, that would increase the risk of China acting before the administration changed hands. I'm not sure that Ukraine is even a green light to China, or at least no more than Joe Biden's administration coming in after the Trump administration and refusing to enforce the sanctions on Iranian oil exports. China is Iran's greatest customer, its biggest customer for their oil exports. That's who imports the most Iranian oil. That under the Trump administration, he crippled them by telling China and 7 other countries, you are not going to be exempt from these sanctions anymore. They got waivers, folks. Not only on the oil, but the oil was it. That's when Trump stopped the waivers officially, I believe, in 18, or refused to renew them in 18 or early 19. And then that really was the straw that broke the camel's back. 6 months later, the virus appeared, by the way. I'm just saying, coincidence. I'm just saying. But when Biden came in and he said, I'm not going to enforce those sanctions and, I'm not going. And then by, what was it, last year or earlier this year? I'd have to go back to the timeline again. I did a thread on it, actually, with all the resources just to make sure I was right about the times. Announcing that he will not be renewing or reissuing those, and what, they're basically saying you're not getting a waiver. That's a green light. That tells China, Iran, the Biden administration is perfectly fine with pumping billions and billions into Iran. Forget about, listen, everyone makes this big deal about $6 billion over, this payment. That is nothing compared to how much money Iran is bringing in since Biden stopped enforcing the sanctions. It's peanuts. Peanuts. That's a green light to me. Not whether or not Republicans in the United States Congress decide that we no longer want to fund a failed effort. And it is a failed effort. Propaganda be damned. It's a failed effort. It is over. You are not going to force the Russians out of eastern Ukraine. It's not going to happen. It'll be over and turn around and go home. Okay, then you bleed out your population, which is what's being that's what's being done to the Ukrainians right now. It is, in fact, the term is in fact called bloodletting. You could look at it as one of the strategies in international relations. They are the victims of bloodletting. Maybe it started out as a bait, but it turned into terrible, terrible bloodletting. And they're going to lose all of their men, many of their women too, of course. But I mean, the population will be severely female. It'll be too young because everyone will be dead. It'll either be young or old male populations. They'll be crippled. And they won't get anything back. Not without significant allied interference. And because we're not putting boots on the ground in terms of conventional forces, then who the hell cares? Who the hell cares if Mike Johnson doesn't want to fund Ukraine? But of course, and again, this really breaks down to who opposed Jim Jordan and who was threatening to oppose Johnson and who opposed everybody else, that was put up to be a compromise candidate. With Jim Jordan definitely being the one who had the most potential of being actually elected. It was the Armed Services Committee. It was the Appropriations Committee. We talked about this with John O'Shea earlier in the week. Go look at who most of the no's were. Or the not no's, but votes for someone other than Jordan. And then look at who Johnson needed in order to get the votes to be speaker. I'm telling you, until all those people are gone, there's no point on it. And I really hope Mike Johnson does not continue making comments like this, because this was like, I'm watching everyone on Twitter and they're maybe overreacting. And let me try to give everybody the down the middle perspective. Mike Johnson cannot move forward with the voting record like Mike Johnson has, because it's not reality. The caucus, the Republican caucus, is not like that, or the conference, whatever. They don't have the votes to do it. So let's, try to be King Solomon here and split the baby down the middle. But that's the last time I'm going to do it. I hear more crap like this out of Mike Johnson's mouth, and I'm going to tell you, it's time to pop a flare. There's a problem here. But he has, again, there should be at least some patience, because a lot of people I respect, I know and I respect, but you do have to understand he's working with a bunch of squishes. That being said, you can do that without propagating lies, without pushing decades and decades old crap we know is not true. Like if I hear one more time about Munich, my head is going to explode. That was World War II. And because they believe this nonsense, it leads to foolish thinking elsewhere. That's why, speaking of Ukraine, before we move on, I do want to move on. I'm going to spend that much time. Before we move on, that's why they thought the geniuses in the Pentagon, the Joint Chiefs, and that's why they thought a blitzkrieg would be and not just good choice, the obvious choice for the strategy employed for the Ukrainians' counteroffensive. It's because they believe in certain myths that are not true. They haven't fought wars like this in a long time. They don't remember what was bullshit for the crowd at home, and then what they talked about behind closed doors to be real and true. Ike never believed stuff like this. That was for the fans at home. Sad. It really is sad. All right, there are a couple of polls I want to go over here. One is a little bit more favorable to Biden. The other one is speaking about flares and warning signs, it's a Democratic group trying to really point something out that is dire warning for Joe Biden. All right, but this poll we're going to go over first is a poll with a very, very terrible, not just during the presidential election, but even in the midterms. Again, they did it. A terrible record of overstating Democratic support. I think they had Josh Shapiro winning the election by nearly 30 points. I'm not kidding. Something like it was like 25. I kid you not. Burwood A. Yost. I don't know what you would expect from anybody named Burwood A. Yost, right? Anyway, Franklin and Marshall, Jim Lee from Susquehanna, once called on APOR, the American Association of Public Opinion Research, to censure Franklin and Marshall for what was just clearly indefensible polling. All right, Hillary Clinton plus 12 or something like that, some ridiculous. It was so bad, and I don't want you guys to hear me refilling my circle here. So as I read, so I'm just going to pop over in the corner here. But key findings. This is right track, wrong track. This is do the residents believe that the state is headed in the right direction? You can see there's a bit of a negative trend. Not bit. I mean, it's been a big negative trend, but then. This last poll they try to conduct the poll almost a monthly, and you can see that there was a resurgence in those who say that the state is headed in the wrong direction versus the right direction. I will say this because we have been working with some localized groups. It does appear that Republicans are still going to get creamed in early voting in the special elections coming up, and they're not special, but they're just off cycle. Excuse me, very soon in Pennsylvania, but. They're doing better than they did in 2020, that they did in some of the other off cycles. Just to give you an update real quick, in one area I was looking at, there's a fun fact for me. Thanks. It looks like in Bucks County, Republicans are already 31% higher in returning mail-in ballots than they were in the general election, off-cycle general election in 21. And in fact, increased early voting, making sure that they got some people who otherwise would not vote out to the polls was the only thing that saved some of the Republican candidates in local races. Election day voting would not have been enough with the traditional electorates. They're very good Democrats in some parts of Pennsylvania, pretending that they share Republican values. And there's some specific issues that would have caused some of the actual Republican candidates to lose in the primary system that's set up, which basically allows Democrats and Republicans to run together, right? So you can have the Democrats calling themselves Republicans. It's crazy, right? So if it wasn't for their increased early vote, they would have lost. So going into the election, it's very important. I'm curious to see what happens in Pennsylvania. It's not as high as I would want to see it if I was Republicans running the state, but it certainly is an improvement, all right? And by the way, in one county, they actually won the early vote in one of those elections in 21, which was very, very impressive. But that should be a template that's moved everywhere. So concerns about the economy are a serious problem. 47% of the state's registered voters believe the schools in their communities do have sufficient funding to educate their students, but 3 in 5, 61, also say most public schools do not have it in the rest of it. So it's like your own congressman. You think they're all a bunch of bums, but your congressman's good, right? They're saying that my school is okay. Why? Because they don't want to pay any more taxes. Yeah, I think that the states generally the state is generally underfunding some of these districts, or it's not even the state, the districts themselves, are relying on that. But in other parts of the state, I think they're struggling, but not mine. All right, the Supreme Court race is interesting. More than 7 in 10 registered voters don't know enough about Daniel McCaffrey, 76%, or Republican Caroline Carluccio, 71%, to even have an opinion. That's interesting. I'm not going to go into the crosstabs. I'm just showing you where we're at. The governor, this is a poll where Shapiro's approval rating still is higher than in other polls. In Emerson, in the last couple Pennsylvania polls that we saw, And let me read a couple of them to you. Shapiro's approval was not that good. So in the Bloomberg Morning Consult, Emerson, Quinnipiac, I believe it was Emerson and Quinnipiac where Shapiro was doing pretty badly when it came to his approval rating, considering where he started, which was really up there. Yeah, he fell from like 60 to 53 with 27% disapproving. Bob Casey's just going to be very tough to beat with his name. He is. Fetterman underwater. Unbelievable. The vote harvesting operation is so good in that state. You can have a senator who can't even talk or function or act appropriately. And I don't mean that as far as social status, act appropriately. I mean, like, he can't act appropriately as a senator. He can't function. But they only have Biden leading Trump by 2. And if you look at some of the things they asked about, which is really stupid, this is a big pollster no-no. Who's closest to your views on values issues, such as abortion and gay marriage? Biden's got that 46-35. On rest of the other key things, though, judgment and character, he's got Trump on. But everything else understands concerns of ordinary citizens. I bet you if we polled that, we would actually find a slight edge for Trump. It's just a difference in the methodology. Is most prepared to handle the economy. Trump is killing him. Will do a better job handling job of the commander of chief in the military. Trump is killing him. Honest and trustworthy, Biden is still ahead. That's probably due to, a lot of pollsters like me, and even those on the left, often ask ourselves what the numbers would really look like with a credible media or an impartial media. And this is one of these things where that's the handicap at play. It really is. Not that anyone really thinks Biden's honest and trustworthy, but when you ask a question like this, I wouldn't be surprised if we did find voters think that Biden is more honest and trustworthy. In fact, we asked this in Pennsylvania for the Epoch Times, Laura, in 2020. We did. We asked it nationally, and we also asked it in Pennsylvania. I'd be curious to see what it is. I really would. But again, the too old to serve, almost nobody thinks Trump is too old to serve. I mean, not alone anyway. 43% say both, but keep that in mind because we're going to move on to that both question. Those people who say both, neither. We're going to move on to that in a second. But the issue of Biden's age, I think, is being phrased incorrectly. This is not about his age. If Biden was sharp as a whip, nobody would care about his age. This is really about cognitive ability. The question is wrong. Too old to serve? That doesn't get to the heart of it, just like the issue question was skewed. Who's closer to who's closer to you on these issues? That's skewed. That was asking incorrectly. But honestly, the wording of this, we've seen this with the pollsters, it has nothing to do with his age. Voters trusted Roosevelt. Roosevelt was physically handicapped. They hid that from the country, but he wasn't mentally handicapped. He winds up dying in office. They still trusted him. He was a father figure to much of the country, which should never be, and I don't like that. But that's my own opinion. Reagan is another great example. They tried to make age an issue about Reagan. After he was shot, his cognitive abilities did decline, but never like Biden. Toward the end, it got really bad there while he was in office. I'm speaking about when he was in office. If you look at the nomination speech he gave for Bush, the second nomination speech for Bush's reelection, it was bad. Really bad. Sad to watch. But this isn't about age, because Trump isn't that much younger than Biden. It should be, does not have the cognitive ability to fulfill the job, the duties of the president. Because that's what this comes down to. I'm telling you. Look at Bernie Sanders. Ancient, that man. And yet, there were people who thought he was sharper and smarter than Hillary Clinton. Certainly sharper and smarter than Joe Biden. The primary's over. This isn't even worth discussing. Let's move on to the other poll that I wanted to talk about, which I'm going to load up here. But as you can see, at least the trend with the Franklin and Marshall poll, Republican primary vote choice has changed dramatically. And even this was a very, very, very DeSantis friendly poll for a long time. And as you can see, it has changed considerably. Those sample sizes to me are too small. In a state like Pennsylvania, there's no way, folks, I'm coming to you with 200 and something responses. I'm just not doing it. Here's a memo from Unite the Country to interested parties, but who do they want to be interested? They want the Biden campaign to be interested. It's a large survey, all right? A large one in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, all right? Let me read it. And I know we're cutting close here, but following our extensive study conducted in late September across Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, all right, what they found is that the two are generally tied among likely voters. Let me see if I can find you your thing here. All right, whatever. They were tied among likely voters, and Trump was up a little bit with those or he was up a little bit with the register voter sample, tied with likely voter, I think is what it was. But those who view them both unfavorably, Trump led again. And they're trying to raise the red flag because we see this too. If they say they don't really like Biden or Trump, in 2020, that vote went to Biden. All right. It shifted to Biden considerably from what it was in 16 against Hillary Clinton. This is a key group in the electorate, folks. A very key group. They tend to be more Republican. There were 482 individuals out of the 3,000 that said they had a negative opinion of both Biden and Trump. Hence the term no voters, they're called, right? But even though Trump led 3 points overall with Biden leading among those that are certain to vote, that's not good enough. They know that. 37% said that they were fluid among this group, all right, in their choice. They are more Republican. They're actually R plus 12, but because which is different than the overall 3,000 sample of D plus 2. But, and I don't know how the hell they're getting D plus 2 in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. I don't see how they're doing that. Michigan could be a little bit more D, but Wisconsin and Pennsylvania both are now as far as self-identified. Not registration, but self-identified. I mean, they're probably just a little bit too educated, which anyway gets us to this. These no voters, even though they're more Republican, they're educated. Okay, so the no voters have 49% of them have a bachelor degree versus 41% of the full sample, which is crazy, by the way. I'd have to go back and look. That sounds kind of insane to me. That makes sense to why they have this tied. I'd have to go back and look. But the upper Midwest is split in party ID 46, so you can kind of see how the no voter is different. All right. And they bring up abortion. They even bring up, I swear to God, the memo says coup about Trump waging a coup. I'm not kidding. All right. But in any event, what's interesting with even their analysis is that if this holds, Donald Trump's going to win the state of Wisconsin by about, where is it? Oh, yeah, it is. About 70,000 votes. All right. Or he'd win by these voters more than 70,000 votes. So if they broke 55 to 45, Trump would win these voters by more than 70,000 votes, meaning he would very likely carry Wisconsin, which he lost by 21,000 votes, less than he won it in 2016. So what are we looking at? We'd be looking at a margin of probably about 40 to 70,000 if the electorate was modeled a little bit different than what they have. If it was closer to our Rust Belt poll, because I'm not doing what happened last time. We overstated Biden in Wisconsin because the weighting model was a lot more, it resembled this more than it does what we do now. And what we frankly did in 16. We were being very cautious in 2020, but we overstated the Democratic share of the electorate, which is why we gave Biden about 1.5 points more in overall support than he ended up getting. And it's right there, you can see it. He only won it by 21,000 votes. I think it was like 0.6 or 0.2, something ridiculously small. All right. So Trump would absolutely carry Wisconsin right now at this point. They say they cannot possibly overstate just how close these battlegrounds are right now. Take Pennsylvania, 13 million ballots were cast in 16 and 20, and the total difference between them was less than 40,000 votes. Or Wisconsin, were only 2,000, 0.3%. 0.03% separated the two parties out of the 6.3 million votes cast in 2016 and 2020. For America, there is no margin for error. And they're basically saying they have got to get their ballot harvesting operation off the ground now. And this has been something that's been a fight with Democrats for a while. They built an operation they believe will outlast the candidate. It doesn't matter who the candidate is. The Biden team, though, has been kind of dragging and slow walking, getting people in place and getting the funding necessary to do it. Republicans are dumb and they're way off the game on this. I'm sorry. It's just true. But this is a warning to Joe Biden, basically saying you really have to hurry up here and get going, because if you don't, Trump is going to carry at least two of these states. All right. So they actually, in their modeling, have Trump up a little bit. Franklin and Marshall have Biden up by about 2, but Franklin and Marshall, I believe, was Biden plus 11 in 2020. They were Hillary Clinton plus 12 in 2016. They have a terrible, terrible habit of overstating Democratic support, especially when Donald Trump is on the ballot. All right, so with that said, we're going to take a real quick break, and then we're going to come back, do the Halloween poll, and then right into your questions. I just wanted to bring this up because it's showing you have the media and the university universe of polling, and then you have, of course, the internal campaign polling, which that group particularly is not normally a group you would see a poll from unless it was leaked. They wanted that, of course, out there because they're trying to get people to start realizing that Donald Trump is ahead. He is currently ahead. He's going to win. He's going to win Wisconsin. He's going to win Pennsylvania. Michigan is too damn close. All right. So if he wins Wisconsin by 30 to 70,000 votes, it's likely, very likely. Well, if he wins Wisconsin by that much, Pennsylvania is going to be right there. With Michigan, it depends. Michigan's the harder of the three for Republicans. But last time when Trump won that state, when he won Wisconsin by about 26,000 votes, he won Michigan by just over 10. But then he lost Michigan by a greater number, as far as, or I would say a greater, it's really a ratio. Wisconsin was still really, really close. And it wasn't that close in Michigan, not nearly. It's close percentage-wise, but it wasn't close vote. When you're talking about vote totals, 200,000 votes versus 23,000 votes, really different. Again, he doesn't need Michigan, but of course, if Donald Trump loves the state of Michigan, if you're a Trump supporter, you want to win the state of Michigan because you want to give yourself a buffer with any other potential mishaps, right? All right, but real quick, we'll come back to all this. Let's take a real quick break. I'll tell you about a deal from our friends at Jam and Bean. Like I always say, there is no political heroes in COVID. There are only people, regular average people, who were the heroes, and the folks at Jam and Bean were one of them. They just so happen to make an outstanding product, right? Whether you're like me, I like my K-Cups when I'm in a rush. I also like to brew my coffee that is freshly roasted if I have time to do it. They got something for everything. And if you sign up for a new subscription right now, use the promo code TPP40 at checkout, and that'll get you 40% off that initial subscription. And then when you re-up every month, you're still going to get 10% off. Their gourmet popcorn is the bomb. I can give you some, if you like savory, right? Of course, the caramel's really good, but the rum's really good if you like stuff like that. But if you don't like sweet and savory, you just want savory. Laura and I love the sour cream and chives and the creamy dill. I know some people, it depends on dill, right? When it comes to this, it's like with Laura, she's iffy on certain dills, but this was incredible. It's delicious. I really can't, there's no way you can go wrong. Right, Laura? I mean, there's no popcorn you can go wrong on. They even made Laura's apple spiced apple pie. What's it called? Can you pop in and tell? Because it was your idea. And it was phenomenal. All right. Just I like things I never thought I would even like because I never, I wasn't a huge caramel popcorn guy. I just wasn't. Theirs is delicious. And they have that butter aftertaste, Laura, with the caramel corn. Yeah. Can you bring it to me? Yeah. Let me see this. Yeah. Because there's a lot of really awesome. And I'm going to. Which one? Yeah, show me. This one's apple pie. That's the one Laura had an idea because we had seen apple and something corn, and Laura was like, how about if you mixed apple with cinnamon and made like an apple pie? And it's amazing. And then spooky mix, which is for Halloween. Vanilla, grape, black cherry, orange, awesome. This one, over the moon good. And I'm not a vanilla guy. She is. Kids are. Vanilla girl. The kids like vanilla. I wasn't, but vanilla blueberry blew me away. And I do like blueberry, but I thought that vanilla could be a little bit overpowering. Oh, this is my jam. But you can't because it's the label. I'm in the middle of eating this one. Buffalo blue cheese, spicy, but I love it. So good. With a creamy hint. So here, I'll throw them all. Oh, you can't go wrong with them. You really can't. So, and they have, I never knew Michigan was a place where they had a culture of maple syrup. They do. And it is a golden as opposed to like some of the darker ones you'll get from Vermont. And then people always say, there's like this rivalry. So folks in Vermont who are listening right now, damn well they're going to get mad as hell. They get mad. They take this stuff seriously. Yeah, look at that. Cinnamon sticks in this. This is really good. This is the regular maple syrup, and then they also have the golden one. It's all delicious, folks. My kids love it. I love it. I'm a big fan of maple syrup. Anyway. Gotcha. Anyway, none but love for you, Laura. None but love for you. And I love cinnamon too, so that was a really good combo. All right, go to jamandbean.com. Use the promo code TPP40 at checkout. jamandbean.com, TPP40. Thank you, Laura. All right, let's take a look at the Halloween poll. So, speaking of Laura, I will now have gloating rights because for the first time, for the first time,
you do not have gloating rights.
Victory is mine. What do you mean?
You do not have gloating rights just because you said what color is for Halloween. Of course, people are going to pick orange. To me, you're cutting me off, sir. I like purple lighting for Halloween. It's the lighting. You were very obtuse in your polling question, Richard.
Yes. It needed to be obtuse, honey. I was right with how I phrased it. I'm telling you.
No, you were not. That is a skewed poll, sir. A skewed poll.
He's calling fake poll on me. No way. It had to be like that because it's not just about lighting. It's about the whole scenery of it and what your theme is. There were people who were questioning when the hell purple even became a Halloween color. Because it's like Christmas, Lord. Do you like red or green better for Christmas? That's what I'm getting at.
Well, you need red and green. Alone. It's no. You're mixing it up. Red and green or blue and silver kind of ordeal. Like red and green was always Christmas, but when did blue and silver? Or my favorite now is pink and silver that I see. Or I personally love red and green. That goes without saying. But when you asked this question, though, you just said Halloween. Of course, everybody's going to pick orange, Richard. Orange pumpkins. Everything is orange.
But they didn't, though. Like that's the thing. If you look at the comments from them, they didn't. They understood exactly what I meant.
No, they didn't. They didn't understand that I think purple lighting is best for Halloween with orange decorations.
Well, you're being too broad. Do you like orange?
No,
you're being too specific. I'm saying, right. I'm not just talking about lights and decorations. What is your colored theme preference? And that is what we asked. That's what we found. And you're just mad that I have found one. Right? Get out of here. I'm bumping her. I'm using executive privilege here. She's out of here. All right. This is what we got. Let's show it. All right. So, asked across, and of course, these are all social polls, right? asked across all platforms. Heavily female, by the way, heavily female. I got demographics on some of them at least. Anyway, for Halloween, which color do you like better? We asked on X, formerly known as Twitter. We asked on Locals, our Getter, Truth, and orange I picked as the color for overall, Laura, because orange won. All right. So orange or purple. And on X, 84.6% said they like orange better than purple for in Halloween. And really, I just said, which color do you like better for Halloween? And then Locals, 83.6%. But don't you notice that it's very consistent across different platforms, which tells you that the question was correct. All right. It was a broad way of asking. Here she comes again. You're bumping my graph here, honey.
Your graph is irrelevant and it is corrupted. It is corrupted 100%.
She's gonna kill me for doing this.
Oh no, you didn't. You little. You know what? I'll start rolling the rollout music, Mr. Barris, and we'll see how well you do. You better hide.
You only hurt the viewers, not me. You know. Here we are. So Getter. Let me give you numbers actually too. Where's the spreadsheet for the numbers? Yeah, probably. Let me get the spreadsheet for the numbers just so I can give you oh, the base is on the thing, isn't it? Didn't I put the effective base on there? I did. 2,532 responses on X or Twitter. I mean, I can't say X. I feel weird saying X. 84.6% of them said orange, 15.4 said purple. On Locals, we got 2,532 overall, 1,777 on X, 293 on Locals, and they said 83.6 orange, 16.4 purple. Truth, 248 responses, which was more than Getter. Interesting, right? 81.1. That was one of the, I think that was the best. Yeah, it was. It was the best for purple. And then Getter, 214 responses. You can see there in the lighter red, 82.2. I tried to use their branding colors, and then the total overall was orange, was going to be the winner. All right, so orange hath won. For Christmas, for Laura, we will do what is your favorite Christmas theme colors. And because that's different. Christmas is more robust. And we'll say, for Christmas, which color theme do you like better? All right, that's what we'll do. Red and green. Blue and silver it is, Laura, right? And some people do that for Hanukkah, but look at the Biltmore collection at Balsam Hill.
There's blue and silver. There's pink and champagne.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of them.
Yeah. There's
silver and gold. Silver and gold. Yeah.
Silver and gold.
Yeah.
And then there's green and red. But to me, that goes without saying. Green is red is.
Sorry. I love that guy. I'll tell you, that guy, what was his name, Laura? Bird Ives. What the hell is his name?
Who are you talking about?
The guy who sings Silver and Gold.
Oh, the snowman. Oh, what is his name? Oh,
Bird Ives, right?
I don't know. I don't remember. I hate getting old. I'm going to Google it. Burl Ives, you're right. You're
Woo! I said Burt, though. I was wrong. Burt.
Oh, Burl.
Yes. Didn't I say Burt? It's Burl Ives, right? Yeah, I don't know what the hell I said anymore, honestly. I have to go back and rewind to the tape. But, yeah, I mean, that guy had a voice that could, that soothed every kid in the whole nation, Really did. Yeah.
And yes, Jonathan, that is the Rudolph song.
Yep. Boy, another poll we didn't have time to go over was how badly DeSantis is performing in some of these battleground states. Haley.
Well, everybody knows he's performing badly and he's not going to win. So I don't even know why he's.
Why are we even doing this anymore? I just don't. They're not being productive anymore, and it's not. And you, like I told Sean Parnell on Wednesday, Laura, he's a grown man. He's a grown ass man, babe. It's not about what they're doing to him anymore. He's doing it to himself. He's the one going out there making the ridiculous comments about teleprompters and stuff. I mean, he is killing himself. He's never going to make a comeback from this. He just sounds so bad. And it's not productive because there is speaking of finite amount, there's a finite amount of resources for presidential campaigns. So RFK raises $10 million. He's taking $10 million. How much could have went to Donald Trump? In the primary itself, anyone who's getting money, it's just a waste of those resources. Even if those people, like, I don't think Rich and Elizabeth Uline are going to give, Rich and Liz are going to give to Trump at all. I've heard that they said that they just want to focus on Senate races and stuff, but you still could give money to causes to get out the vote, to register new voters. And it's just a waste of money. It really is. This thing is over. It's over. I like the Monster Mash. I had it to show them. Of course, I'm a fan of
Thriller.
Yep. Laura and I really love Thriller. Let me see if I can find. I don't want to go off here. So let me see. That's a good question. That's a good Friday question. Why? Because we're not going to. Are we going to see them before Halloween? No. We're not. And we do have to talk next week. No. Yes, we will see them before Halloween. And then we need to talk more about what we're going to do next week, whether or not Laura and I go. We have to be gone looks like we will. I'm not sure if we can make arrangements for our kids in time, but if we can, we're gonna go to the premiere of Police State at Mar-a-Lago, and we got an invite to go, and we would like to go. I want to see the movie. I think it's a very important movie. But we need to try to make arrangements with our kids. We'll have to see. Obviously that would impact Wednesday's show. Jonathan, he's setting the stage for holding up Ukraine funding indefinitely based on the likely resistance of the White House to allowing appropriate oversight. No, Jonathan, I kind of see this as how you're seeing this. Like, yeah, he's saying he's going to not abandon Ukraine. And he's saying that he's open to making sure the funding continues. But he's demanding something that nobody else is going to agree with. Democrats don't want oversight over the money. They don't want accountability over the money because they're laundering it to their benefactors. Adam Schiff literally rubs elbows with Ukrainian arms dealers. He has gotten funds from people with ties to Ukrainian gun runners. So they don't want any of this to happen. I mean, so that I see this the way you see it, Jonathan. I think this is like him saying what he thinks people want to hear so he doesn't lose the coalition. But he doesn't, he's not going to capitulate. If he does capitulate to it, Jonathan, then we have a problem. And because it's going to have people like Don Bacon and his committee members, along with all the Democrats on the Armed Services Committee, demanding this thing gets funding. And you watch how much they pull in order to try to do it. He also is saying something that's very important to me. No more continuing resolutions. No more omnibus spending bills. We're going to be doing this single subject appropriations. That is the way Congress works. It's supposed to work. That's the way it always worked throughout my lifetime in the pre-Obama era. Obama broke the legislative process. The Obama administration. Well, I don't just blame Obama. I don't. I blame Bush Jr. a lot. It's just that Obama took advantage of what Bush Jr. allowed. That's what I think. All right. Let me just go ahead and put this up. Give me 1 second, guys. I need a drink of water. And I'll read. But I generally see this like Jonathan does.
I'm right. Purple lighting is better.
No way. I do like purple. Like, I love our purple trees. Can you grab those trees? I'll show them to him.
Keyword lighting. Lighting, sir.
I do, but the lights are purple in those trees. There are things that I do like. I just like purple as accent. The overall theme lighting should still be orangey. We have the house purple because Laura owns the house purple. I have all the projected lights purple, but we just don't have enough orange. And honestly, that's not her fault. we have a lot of stuff that lights up orange, pumpkins. You saw one decoration, but we also have these stacked pumpkin lights. The wind, because we live off the river, the wind is so brutal. It'll take these things and just gone. I find them, like on the side of the house if I'm lucky the next day. Christmas, same thing. We have these beautiful, like Chaucer, like 19th century England, mid 19th century England looking
lamp posts, my love.
Yeah, oil lamp posts, and they're beautiful. And one of them got smashed to pieces. The wind took it and just smashed. And the base is heavy. It's just that it's a very, very, very heavy, looking at the last question. Very heavy winds. Off the water, and we don't live on the water. We live close enough that it's bad. All right, so somebody said, can we go over the University of Amherst poll? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. I'll go over it as brief as I possibly can. It's a YouGov poll, which always concerns me. You guys know that. I have felt a little bit better about YouGov only because I know where they're getting a lot of their samples from now. They kind of grew too big for their britches, and they got CBS, they got Foreign Policy, they got The Economist, they got Yahoo News. So they're like, they needed to reach out. So I know they're getting them from a better place, but it does seem that their weighting sets could be the pollster that gets them. But it does look like it's still too Democratic. But Massachusetts is a very Democratic state still. Very Democratic. And it's not just Democratic because it's D+3, right? Or D+30 or whatever. It's educated. Very, very educated. Or credentialed, right, Laura? Credentialed is a better word. Credentialed. Let me go to, where are you, Massachusetts? There you are. All right, so I'm actually going to go to the voter file too, just so I can look it up real quick, run the count. All right, and then let's go to 2020. Massachusetts, another state where Donald Trump had pulled out some votes, very, very impressive votes in some areas, but it didn't matter. Biden won it 65.9 to 32.3. The new poll from University of Massachusetts shows that Biden's only up by 22. Biden has fallen all the way to 43. Trump is at 21, and Kennedy is getting 17%. I don't know about this. I just don't know about it because it's educated, and I just don't know, folks. I really don't. If Kennedy continues, and I saw another question that's about Kennedy. Maybe I can kind of blend both together, and that's Spinnaker saying, RFK Jr. proposes reparations and then sees it repels Trump voters and attracts Biden voters, so he backpedals. Fair read. It is a fair read. That's a really good point, Spinnaker. And that's what I was trying to bring into this. If he continues to do this, he could potentially change the dynamic. But, and what do I mean by that? Appeal to some more educated people. I just don't think the UMass poll is right. I just don't. I don't. He's taking some from Trump. He's taking a lot from Biden. It's also just that Biden has really collapsed with a lot of voters. They also don't give you a whole lot of the PDF that UMass released isn't really enough to give you a really solid idea of where the votes are being taken from. They put up this stupid little table. I mean, I never knew we could get away with this. And then the demographic table, high school or less is 32, college degree 34, post-grad is 19. So very educated. By independent is 23, Democrat is 52, and Republican is 25. If you look at the voter file analysis, let me just run it real quick, let it do its thing. That's actually not bad. It's not a bad. There are tons and tons of people who are registered as nothing on the voter file. It's huge in Massachusetts, but they call themselves Democrats. And there's only about, I mean, it's little. It's in the teens of Republicans. It's pathetic. But with somebody on the ballot like Kennedy, it could potentially do some damage. It's not that hard for libertarians and Greens to get on the ballot in Massachusetts, but it is harder for an independent. I think that is one state where Kennedy could potentially get on. Only 23% conservative, very educated. I just think that they didn't give us enough to really delve into who he's taking these votes from. And I just think that the top line looks fishy to me. I'm just being honest. It looks fishy. I would be, maybe, listen, Ted Kennedy represented the state as senator for years, right? And they know the name. That may be the one state where, as of right now, they're hearing the name Kennedy and they're thinking, oh, it's not RFK. They're not thinking RFK specifically. They're thinking it's a Kennedy. And because there's so many people, and of course he is a Kennedy, but I'm saying they're misrepresenting who he is. Or it's not that the pollster is, the voter is in their mind. And I think as time goes on, that's going to get cleaned up. It's possible in Massachusetts, because of their history, that is the one state where Biden can get hurt from it. I just don't know that he can be hurt enough that Trump could actually squeeze by and win. It's possible. It is. If he gets a third of the vote and those two get, one gets, now he'd need to get more. He'd need to get almost 40% to make sure that that's going to happen. Because if they split it three ways, 33, 33, 33, which is not likely to happen, what's more likely to happen is that one is going to get 40, the other one to get like 20, and Trump would need to be able to get more in order to reduce, both of them into the 30s. It's tough, guys, really tough. And I'm not sure it's going to hold, because as time goes on, people know who Kennedy is. People, you have to understand right now, when we're looking at the dynamics of independents and third parties, a lot of people don't want Joe Biden to run. A lot of Democrats wanted somebody else. They did. And the party said no. So it's not that they want Kennedy. It's just they wanted somebody else. And they're picking a generic someone else right now because of that reason. We've actually found, by the way, that there have been that generic someone else that we ask about all the time in presidential races, that has been favoring Trump over Biden for a while now. It seems that there have been more Democrats who just throw their vote to generic someone else more so than Republicans. And that's why some points Trump has opened up a pretty, what looks to be significant lead. I think if those Democrats were to coalesce and then come back home, that race gets tight again real quick. I do think Trump has an edge, but I think that's what you're seeing in the UMass poll. I just don't buy it. I saw it the other day, and I just didn't buy the general election numbers. But again, primary numbers are predictive at this point, and it's a Trump plus 40 poll. I mean, DeSantis, I just said DeSantis. Oh, my God. Is that DeSantis is at 15%. And Trump is in the 54. Here's why that's important. Where's my little handy map? We got to go to my archive. Come on. Oh, I should have just typed in delegate. Matter of fact, let me just do that. There's too many. Oh, there's the map too. I should not have touched it, because when I did, it came back. Here we go. All right, let me open it up. My handy dandy map. Where are you? Here you are. Let's put this up here so you guys can see it. Add to you. There you go. Let's put it up so you can read. This is the state of Massachusetts. As you can see, there are a lot of delegates in Massachusetts for the Republican. Now, again, when in the book club, we've actually been talking about this. If Trump does do significantly better with non-Yankee voters, Catholic vote, which he does, and then peels some Yankees, you would need, and then there's this real fight over, non-Catholic white liberals. Then you can make, you could make a state like Massachusetts real interesting because of what Trump did there last time. But here's the rule. It's a semi-closed. Voters must generally be registered. All 40 delegates are bound to the results of the vote. If a candidate earns 50% or more, all 40 delegates are awarded on a winner-take-all basis. If two or more candidates receive more than 20% of the statewide vote, all 40 delegates are allocated to those candidates via the votes for the candidate divided by total votes for candidate receiving more than 20% of the vote. That's what we call total qualifying vote on our maps. If only one candidate receives 20% or more, all 40 delegates are allocated to the two candidates receiving the greatest share. You can go down and down and down. All of those are rounding rules and different equations we put up to show you how they allocate delegates, but none of it matters. Can somebody tell me why? Because it has a winner majority threshold. And Trump is currently at, let me go to the average. Okay, so it looks like Scott went from 1 to 6. DeSantis went from 18 to 15. Haley went from 4 to 12. Pence went from 10 to 3. But either way, the last Amherst poll was Trump plus 41. This one's Trump plus 39. He fell 5 points from 59 to 54, which is a little bit weird to me. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Well, no, because look at when it was conducted. It ended April 5th. We had him shooting up around April, May. So it's possible they got a little bit of a gyration there. Anyway, he's still above 50. All he's got to get is 50 plus 1. And then it's winner take all, and that's it. So Trump he's going to take, that's why some of you guys got to be careful with the delegate estimation models out there. A lot of them I've noticed are not taking into consideration some of the threshold rules for minimum thresholds, and then also the majority. Because as of right now, look at that, 20% of the statewide vote. Neither DeSantis nor Haley are anywhere near 20% of the statewide vote. Well, DeSantis, if you use the sampling error, he would fall just shy of it. If you added the sampling error to his margin right now, or his total vote share right now, he'd still fall just below 20%. And Trump would trigger the winner take all. So it's possible that Trump gets 52, but they split their votes, 12, 15, 17, whatever it may be. And it won't matter because you still, in order, have to qualify for votes, qualify for delegates. In Massachusetts, you must earn 20% of the vote. And none of them are doing that. None of them ever have, by the way. The closest one was DeSantis at 18% last spring. But nobody has ever been above 20% except for Donald Trump. That's it. And I'm telling you, I just don't see it. I don't see how anything from now to then is really going to change or give anybody a spark. People ask me all the time, this was one of the moments that really hurt Ron DeSantis. I just want to play this because I see a lot of these questions about why is Haley, she's not really doing anything. What has she done? She put on a good debate performance and capitalized well on the debate performance plus, and not a good one for you, I, and rest of America. A good one for that minority of never Trumpers who are really looking for somebody other than Donald Trump. They're not a big part of the party, but they nevertheless are still there. And they're just trading each other votes with each other after, throughout the news cycle. And Nikki Haley has done a better job with the news cycle than the the DeSantis campaign has done. Sorry, not Trump. Trump's they're the master of the news cycle. When it comes to a primary, anyway, they are. But there was a moment during the campaign, the debate, excuse me. There was a moment where DeSantis lost his butt with some of these voters, and I'm going to play it.
Have their backs. What you don't need is a president who is against energy independence. Ron DeSantis is against fracking. He's against drilling. He's been against. You did it. He always talks about what happens on day one. You better watch out because what happens on day two is when you're in trouble. Day two in Florida, you banned fracking. You banned offshore drilling. You did it on federal lands, and you took green subsidies that you didn't have to take.
Governor DeSantis, you were mentioned. You have the right to respond. 30 seconds.
Yeah. I just did a plan out in West Texas for American energy dominance. We're going to choose Midland over Moscow. We're going to choose the Marcellus over the Mullahs, and we're going to choose Bakken over Beijing, and we are going to lower your gas prices. We are going to get that job done because it's important for our national security, it's important for jobs, and that's one of the best ways to drive down inflation.
Governor DeSantis. Governor DeSantis.
So the only answer to that because this is ridiculous.
DeSantis, this question is for you.
Our voters enacted a constitutional amendment.
You banned it before they voted.
Doesn't allow. No, it's not true.
You banned it before they voted, and not only that, fracking wasn't. They didn't vote on fracking. She's totally
wrong. They voted it in. That's what we did. Onshore, we do it in Florida. We don't have as much as maybe West Texas, but we do it. But that was a constitutional amendment. So that's just wrong. And let's just get real here. My plan will get the job done. We are going to be energy dominant, and that's what's going to happen.
And the voters didn't even vote on fracking, and you banned
We are
fracking.
moving on with this question for Governor DeSantis. Governor, excuse me, we cannot talk over each other. We must respect each other's time. My apologies for that.
I'm ready, Stuart.
Governor DeSantis, this is your question. The Biden administration is hell-bent on student loan forgiveness.
Blah, 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 blah. Here's about student loan. All right. That was a moment that hurt Ron DeSantis badly, and a great moment to exemplify what I'm talking about here. That the Haley campaign is better at seizing something in the news cycle and making it work to their benefit. Most fact checkers rated that as half true, mostly true. We did a fact check ourselves. I'm intimately familiar with that particular issue and how that went down. And we rated it, and I'll show you the rating first, as mostly true because it's mostly true. The only thing that she said wrong is that was not true, is that you banned it before they voted. That's technically not true, but what he did do was campaign on banning it. So let me just read this, because we asked people about this for another survey, separate survey. It hurt him. It hurt him bad. Nikki Haley claimed Ron DeSantis, quote, banned fracking during the second presidential debate, which, by the way, voters want canceled. They don't want these debates. This debate was bad for the Republican Party's image. It was good for Donald Trump. A lot of voters said we're done with these people and moving on. And then, by the way, the third debate that they have scheduled is friggin' Lester Holt, Kristen Welker, and Hugh Hewitt. The Republican establishment bitches and moans about how biased the media is, blah, blah, blah. And then they do crap like this, which undoes all the work that people like myself and all these other independent content creators, the hard work we put in, every day, all throughout the day. They do this, and what they're doing is lending credibility back to these people. You can't complain that they're biased and corrupt even if you do this. You'll never see Tucker Carlson. You'll never see Sean Hannity. You'll never see Bill O'Reilly. You'll never see me moderate a Democratic primary debate. They are putting advertising revenue and donors, big donors, before they're putting the welfare of the party, the people, or the country. And they're disgusting. They make me sick. Anyway, let me put this up bigger. All right. Quote. When Governor DeSantis was not governor and he was first running for his first term, on his campaign website, it said, "We promise to work to ban fracking." With Florida's geological makeup of limestone and shallow water sources, fracking presents a danger to our state that is not acceptable. On day one, Ron DeSantis will advocate to the Florida legislature to pass legislation that bans fracking in the state. And in fact, 2 days after he took office, he signed Executive Order 1912, which directed the Department of Environmental Protection to, quote, take necessary actions to adamantly oppose all offshore oil and gas activities off every coast in Florida and hydraulic fracturing in Florida, unquote. So he can go to Texas now and talk about the program he laid out to the big donors, because that's what he was talking about. It was a donor meeting with big oil. And he was promising how he's going to do all of this stuff when he gets to be president. Give me more money. And they, believe me, said, but your record isn't great on this. And he said, well, I'm different now. I flip-flopped. It's different to be the president of the United States than the governor of Florida. Sound familiar, Governor? Did you or did you not say almost that verbatim? Right? New oil and gas permits had to include provisions forbidding the use of fracking, but pre-approved fracking still occur. That's true. However, DeSantis' rebuttal claims that voters approved the amendment in 2018. That's true. In the amendment, it stated, drilling for exploration or extraction of oil or natural gas on lands beneath all state waters, which have not been alienated and that lie between the mean high water line and outmost boundaries of the state's territorial seas. That's what it pertained to. But still, nevertheless, the only thing she said wrong was that you banned it before. He promised to ban it before when he was running. But the amendment that was passed when Governor DeSantis was first elected governor. But it is mostly true again, because it's just a fact that it took him all but 2 days to sign an executive order doing something that he thought he could never get through the Florida legislature. Why does this matter? This is the group of voters in Never Trump land. They are still big oil people. All right. A lot of them are. They're big energy, period. And they don't overlook the stuff they hate about Trump because he's the best on this issue. And he is. He's got the record nobody else has. He is the best on this issue. But he's also, somebody, I would say he is a green Republican. He is, just because he pulled out of the Paris Accord deal. Look what he was doing in Michigan with the project that was abandoned by Democrats for the Great Lakes, right? He's a green Republican, but he is in favor of seizing energy resources in the country. But they, don't care about that. They care about his crassness, how rude he is, and all of the other policies with free trade and immigration that they don't like. So anyone who's going to be the Never Trump alternative to Donald Trump still has to be a big oil person. And Nikki got DeSantis on that exchange, and that exchange hurt. And she was better at seizing that in the news site. A couple of days later, a poll came out showing her doing way better than DeSantis, against Biden. Of course, that's all a load of crap. You all know it's a load of crap, and I all know, we know it's a load of crap. We've talked about this a lot, and you know why that's the case. But it doesn't matter. How you spin it is what matters. By the way, for instance, DeSantis, he could not seize on the poll that came out from the University of Texas, showing that Haley actually will lose Texas. And I'm telling you, she will lose Texas. She'll lose Florida for sure. There's no Midwest state that she's going to catch, that nobody else is. That is a load of crap. These national polls that have her up are, we can get it. I need a whole other episode to explain it. But the fact is, the other polls are not particularly conducive to low-name candidates like Nikki Haley that have policy positions. She would, in fact, lose, a lot of these states that are easy grabs for Trump. And DeSantis did better than her in the University of Texas poll, but he was still doing so much more poorly than Trump that he could not tout the poll. All right, so it's not that the Republican vote share fell from 47 to 39. It's not just that. Trump outperforms DeSantis and others because Biden's vote share typically will rise in the battleground states. It's not, and nationally it falls, so like you'll have Trump up by 49, 47 against Biden, and then Haley up by 5 or something, and it'll be like 47, 42, right? And it looks like it's a much better performance, but it's not. It's just people backing off Biden because they didn't really know who she is, and it's a generic name to them nationally. But in a lot of these battleground states where it's not generic, then you see what really happens. Now that DeSantis is more known, you're seeing what really happens. He loses vote share from Republicans, and Biden goes up to 38. So DeSantis was only up by 1 in Texas. 1. And I'm telling you, if you don't believe that, you better go look at the Hispanic vote preference in that poll. And in every poll, Trump is not winning Texas by 8 to 12 points, depending, because he's doing so well in the Anglo vote. Anglo vote's getting more educated. He does something the rest don't. He makes that vote up all across the state, but particularly in the South among Hispanic voters, where he swung Starr County by 30 plus points, where he won Zapata County, Hidalgo, all these areas where Republicans just can't compete. And in 22, they didn't compete again. It's just him. It's unique to him. But again, DeSantis couldn't take advantage of that because DeSantis' performance in that poll was really bad. So Haley has done a much better job at doing that. And that's why she's rising in some of these other areas. All right, let's see what else we got. Someone tried arguing to me that the U.S. isn't bankrupt. All I had to do was point to the debt clock, and he had no response. Hotcake, this is a moment where, we're all living in this false sense of security. And that debt clock scares the hell out of me. It should scare the hell out of everybody. And again, it was so popular to talk about when Barack Obama was president, but now nobody wants to bring it up anymore. Difference between Trump, by the way, I used to like watching the debt clock under Donald Trump. Before COVID, we did the national debt tracker on People's Pundit Daily. It was going down. Projections were right. projections were CBO were wrong at first about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Our projections were right. We're like, that's static, not dynamic. Revenue is going to go up. And you could look at revenue, actually increasing and deficit spending falling. And it takes time, but total U.S. Obligations were falling for a while under Trump. And then the CARES Act blew it all up. One of the main reasons why I was against the CARES Act. Not that I didn't think we needed to respond to the pandemic. I did. And maybe call me a little bit brutal, but that was a major accomplishment in the Trump era. We needed to grow and then start to grow our way out of it, and then have a conversation about what had to be cut after he basically resupplied the military. It was a good time to start taking on reductions in defense and reduction. I mean, there are whole agencies I would get rid of, frankly. That doesn't mean I'd weaken our military. I just don't think we're an insular power. We don't need this. And it doesn't matter, because the question is not whether we need it. The question is, do you want to have one at all? Because when that debt bomb blows, hotcake, it's over. Over. And it's going to be gross austerity. Gross. It's going to hurt a lot of people. It's going to hurt a lot more people than some invader could try to hurt. I mean, you cannot invade through the Atlantic or Pacific Coast. You just can't do it. We're fine right here. We're fine. Just defend ourselves from new age missiles, information, warfare, cyber warfare, and start paying this thing down, man. Anyway, the CARES Act, like I said, if I was an older person, let me put it this way. If I had lived a full life and I was at risk, I frankly would have said, don't spend that money. I'm more concerned about the people who will come after me. I really would have. I know I would have. It's not a hypothetical in one of those things where you say, I'd like to think that that's how I'd react. No, that's how I would have reacted. But let the virus work its way through the population. The strong will live. The young will live, and the nation will remain strong. If it gets me and I go, I lived a full life. Sorry, that's just the way. $4 trillion, $5 trillion. I mean, you cannot spend that kind of money. And then, by the way, here we are now, how many years later, and it's very difficult to argue with Democrats about that because Trump was president when so much of that was added. And it gave Biden a green light when he came in to be president to pretend like the pandemic was still full-blown ongoing with like Delta, which was a sniffle, and spending even more money on the CARES Act. All right, so what is today? Friday? Yeah. All right, hotcake, we went over that one. Okay, Nicholas. How often, or generally speaking, do New York Republicans campaign in New York City? It seems like that would be the smart thing to do if they wanted to win. They never campaign. Not until Gavin Wax took over the Republican club out there, and the establishment hates his guts. They don't help him at all. They're the only ones who have made any gains statewide. Lee Zeldin's near victory had nothing to do with state Republicans. It had everything to do with America First. The establishment in New York can't stand America First. The voters love it. The base loves it, but they can't stand it. They're just they're still as squish as they come. The losers who still think George Pataki could win statewide. There's no chance George Pataki would win statewide now. And Lee Zeldin's a great example of that, by the way. Lee Zeldin was a better candidate with arguably worse conditions than when George Pataki won. I don't know how much I want to say, but let me just put it this way. I think the future for Trump should be an urban-rural coalition. I'm not saying you forsake the suburbs. I'm just saying there's a lot of votes that, we brought this up. Didn't I show you this the other day? I think I did, but I'll just put it up as we're talking anyway. There's a lot of votes in urban areas all over the country. It's not just New York. And I long thought that people needed to come to grips with America First. And when they did, then that would allow them to go into some of these areas. You do a lot of damage, folks, when you take, 5-6 points off the urban vote. That's a major, major change in the overall share statewide. And you can afford to do a little bit worse in the suburbs here and there if you do that and still crank your rural vote out. I mean, like, look at New York City. Look at it. 14% in Siena poll in 2020. This poll understated his vote share by 9 points, but they didn't understate his vote in New York, New York. Now they have him at 26. Folks, that's a 12-point shift in New York City. That's a lot of votes. A lot of votes. And if they're understating his support in the burbs and really in rural, it was rural upstate. That's where they were really understated his support. If they're doing that in rural upstate, holy moly. New York is different, by the way, than Massachusetts. It is. Some of the trends we're seeing right now, it's not at all surprising that you would see a much closer race in New York than in a state like Massachusetts. Why? Because it's not more non-white. It's less educated. Favorite Halloween songs? I couldn't find that thing, but I know, but I couldn't find that. I wanted to put up the thing, Laura. The mix. Here's a good mix. I want to put the. Yep, here's a good mix. Hold on. Survey Monkey's ads. I've been listening to this mix lately. Hold on. I'm gonna put it up, and then I'll put the thing in for Laura to grab and share. It's a YouTube mix I've been just listening to, and then this guy when I went to the county dump or the town dump, the city dump, because we don't get big stuff taken away. I got to remove all cardboards, everything. I got to bring to the dump myself. This was good. And then on Spotify, I had texted my daughter the name of the playlist that the guys at the dump created because it was really good playlist, and it was even songs a lot of people don't realize or remember are actually Halloween songs. But this one's a good one. It's got Monster Mash, The Addams Family. I Put a Spell on You is a great song. Ghostbusters, This Is Halloween is a great song. Time Warp, Spooky Scary. Time Warp is in Sabrina the Teenage Witch remake. Spooky Scary Skeletons, Werewolves of London, great song. Thriller, classic. Running with the Devil, Van Halen. Pet Sematary, Witch Doctor, Oogie Boogie Song, Disturbia, Killer Clowns, Feed My Frankenstein, Somebody's Watching Me. It's good stuff. There's a lot of them out there, but I do love the Monster Mash still. I really do. I get the kid in me that remembers the Monster Mash when I was a kid, and we used to do some crazy stuff for Halloween. We put it on. Halloween was a big deal. Pumpkin picking and pumpkin carving in my family is a really big deal. Like, knives are for amateurs and for touch-ups. We Dremel carve. All right. So crazy, right? We've done some really, really cool stuff. We usually do like a spooky one and a traditional and/or funny one, It's just pure rage against the orange man bad and his crowd. They hate that he represents the party, and they are left out in the cold now. Great example of, John O'Shea the other day, right? Wasn't that a great clip from John? I don't know if you guys saw it, but I had put up a clip from John O'Shea, and he was talking about how the party's just going to have to come to grips with the fact that he's the leader of the party, and he's doing what they claim they wanted to do. It's not them bringing in these votes. It's him, and you know what? I will play that. Actually, it's not that long at all. I'll play that. We'll go over it again, but he really put it, and we don't have to listen to the stuff about what happened with the Speaker of the House vote, but the beginning is interesting. Let's listen to John and what he had to say here. All right. Wow. That's weird. Whoa. Look at that, Laura.
What did you touch?
No, it's like that. It's just like that.
Because you were both up. Never mind. Okay. I thought you were
strange is that. Look, although I'm wearing a different Seymour Duncan shirt. Funny. All right, let's rock it.
To grips with the terms that President Trump is the leader of this party now. He is the person who has energized and fired up the base. He's the one who's gotten people to come out to vote that haven't been voting in ages. And he's the one who's making inroads into communities and groups that heretofore never would have considered voting Republican. So this anti-Trump, kind of group that's curled up in the fetal position, sucking their thumbs, they just need to get over it, because it's the will of the people, and they don't listen to the people. They don't understand that the country extends outside the Acela corridor. And everybody that I talk to, it's amazing. Look, I put my neck out there for Ken because it was the right thing to do. He was in the right, and he represented the will of 4.3 million voters here in Texas. And consequences be darned. I mean, sometimes you just have to take a stand. But the people who I spoke to who were even upset that,
and that part we don't have to bring up, but if you want to, we can listen to it. But this is him talking about, the Don Bacons and the Keg Rangers. They not only opposed Jordan, they whipped their committees, Don being the Armed Services Committee and Granger being the Appropriations Committee. They whipped their members on the committee to vote against Jordan. And if they didn't, they threatened their position. They threatened to remove them from the Appropriations and Armed Services Committees if they didn't listen to the chair. Folks, that's just gross. It's gross. I mean, people will say, well, that's whipping, but it is to some extent, but that's really, really something else. And somebody's got a great question here about RFK, and I want to show them. He says, does the polling show that those who lean RFK are Biden voters from 2020? They're about equal. It's a little bit in one matchup, the one with, because it was with and without West. In the one matchup, it's a little bit more toward Trump, and in the other matchup, it's a little bit more toward Biden. And I'm looking at when you have West on the ballot, that's when Kennedy really hurts Biden. And let me show you. All right, let me get the crosstab up. Why? Because there's a point where Donald Trump's vote share just refuses to fall anymore. All right. So you're seeing that Kennedy takes 9% of Biden's voters versus 5% of Trump's voters. Now, when it's Trump v. Kennedy versus Trump v. Biden versus Kennedy, it's about equal. Now, the real problem is that when Kennedy is on the ballot, he's taking a lot more of these voters that would otherwise go to Donald Trump. Okay, watch. See? So, well, I mean, it's someone else more than anything else. The Joe Jorgensen voter is about the same, right? It's like 5. Hold on. Yeah, it stays at 5. But Biden's getting some of that as well. And then when he's not, he gets less. I know it's a weird dynamic. I know, but again, that's nationally. So when I really, really want to do the Rust Belt poll, because let me see if I can show you guys a little something. I isolated. Hold on. Let me move this out. Move the 2020 vote over. And it's the new voter, too, where Kennedy hurts. That was just 2020 vote. The new voter and non-midterm voter is what hurts Trump when Kennedy's on the ballot. Come on, hurry up, hurry up. Yeah, here's the Rust Belt 6. Please tell me I saved it so I don't have to highlight it all again. Okay, cool. All right, so here's the Rust Belt 6, just out of them. Not huge sample sizes, but still you can see. Trump with a 7-point lead overall when it's both really when it's with and without Kennedy on the ballot. But if you look, it's like in some states like Iowa, he's hurting both of them. He does, but he hurts. Basically, it doesn't matter because Trump is so far ahead, it really wouldn't matter. In a state like Minnesota, that's one state where it is possible that Kennedy can do some real damage with if he pulls those traditional Democrats away still. Well, I don't know that. But the one state, look, which really is a problem for Donald Trump is Pennsylvania, which shouldn't surprise you given the demographics that we talked about. And by the way, he hurts him in Ohio too. But again, it doesn't matter because Trump is so far ahead. Why is Wyoming in there? That's supposed to be Wisconsin. What am I doing here? Whoops. Hold on one second, guys. Oops. There we go. And let me save it. Close the editor. Thank you. All right. And you can see Trump holds his own in Wisconsin. The biggest sample here, though, is Pennsylvania. And so why does that matter to me? Because they're so small samples. That's why I want to do the Rust Belt poll and get a bigger sample. But in Pennsylvania, it's the largest and it's not super significant, but obviously it's a lot better than Minnesota. It's a lot better than Wisconsin. It's more than Wisconsin and Minnesota combined, right? And why is that? Because it's one of the bigger states. And so Ohio and Michigan are after that. Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin are rather small compared to them. Definitely Iowa, Iowa especially. But in Pennsylvania, where we see the biggest sample, Trump loses about 1.4%, and Biden only loses a single response. It goes from 39.7 to 39.2. Kennedy polls 7%. A lot of that comes from third party. It does. 4% comes from it, but 1.4 comes from Trump. And that's a problem because it's starting to look real close, isn't it? This is also, by the way, why I want to lean. All right. I think we need to start leaning. And I mean leaning without giving them an opportunity to say they're undecided again. Because some leans do say, look, though you're undecided, if you had to, who would you say you're leaning toward? Right? And then it'll be Trump, Biden, someone else undecided again. You're just giving them the opportunity to tell you whether or not they're leaning. I want to push them into choosing. I want to say, though you're undecided, if you had to, for whom would you vote? If you had to make a choice now, for whom would you vote? And then we'll see what the real deal is. Because I do have a feeling some of these leads with Trump, they're bigger than we've ever seen before. But if you force them, I have a feeling some of them are going to go back to Biden. And it's going to make the race tighter than it looks. Why? Because we're in a very, very partisan environment. All right. Pence already nuked his career in 20. Christie was irrelevant in the late teens, 20 teens. In your opinion, do any of these other also-rans get out with an intact political career? If Ramaswamy wants one, so far he's kept it up that he could have one. But right now, the rest of them are basically killing themselves. Perry Johnson made it so he may be able to run later for maybe Senate or something, congressman or senator, and then end up with a viable career path if he wants to. He did exactly what the voters want these candidates to do. And we know, we've asked them, and he did it with the perfect language. He's Michigan, so I get it. He's saying that's, look, not only are we not gaining enough traction, the numbers aren't there. The president has won the nomination, but we have to get behind him. If you care about the country, then it's him or bust. We're done. That's the attitude that voters wanted people to see to keep those careers intact. Unfortunately, they're not getting that attitude. They're getting excuses about how they think that he'll still lose to Biden. It does. You're bringing up irrelevant arguments. You have no chance to beat Joe Biden. None. The only one who does have a chance to beat Joe Biden is Donald Trump. He'll have the best chance if these people do what Perry Johnson did. That's all that matters at this point. All of the other arguments do not matter. Even MAGA candidates have a hard time getting out those votes that we are all seeing, all pollsters from across the spectrum. We're all seeing and identifying the same people who Republicans will need to win a presidential election. He's the only one who can do it. It's so crystal clear, it's not even funny. And they dwarf the female vote shift. And by the way, I don't want to bring New York up again, but we just went over this. Men were flat. It's the suburban woman behind Trump's lead. It's the shift with the suburban woman coupled with the urban non-white vote. Those are the most impactful shifts that are causing Donald Trump's support to rise to levels we've just never seen before. Ever. You cannot beat Joe Biden. Not also rans. And this idea that you're going to beat him because you're not Donald Trump and you're going to keep Democratic turnout down is insane. Laura, do I have Jack right now? Shit. No, right? Uh-oh.
No, you don't. 235. Calm down.
I don't know where I'm thinking here. I don't know what I've been thinking. All right. Anyway, that's about it. I'm thinking Perry, and I'm thinking Vivek. If Vivek plays his cards right, but that this is just not good for them. I do think that Trump should call on Rona to resign. I think Kevin McCarthy got a lot of I don't want to say it's unfair, but he got all the blame. And that truth is that blame needed to be shared with McConnell and Ronna McDaniel. She is obviously trying to undermine his election bid. And why is she doing it? Because she wants the money. Why are these debates continuing? Because of the money. She wants the money. The big donors who fund all of her programs. They don't want him. It's her job to communicate to them what is possible and what is not. They may have the money, but the people have the votes. Sometimes you just lose. This is the thing. The establishments, they never want to accept when they lose. You're expected to give in immediately and accept when you've been defeated by them. But when they've been defeated, they don't accept it. They undermine, they rig, they sabotage. Good smack in the mouth. That's what they need. I'm telling you. Anyway, Laura's correct. Purple adds a feeling of eeriness and scary. Orange is autumn. I actually agree with that. I think it's Michelle G or Mick. I don't know if it's Michael or Michelle, but I actually agree with that. Your show, when it comes to but I like it as the eerie accent. Overall, orange I like the best, even for not just autumn, but for Halloween itself. I voted for orange, but Laura is 100% correct that purple lighting on the orange decorations. You had to change the viewfinder at this moment, didn't you? You're such a spiteful. You know what, Laura, though? That's what keeps this all interesting between us, Now I have to come up with the manly way to make you pay for that or something, and you'll come up with another way to punish me. And that keeps things interesting, doesn't it? I knew you were going to do that. I was looking at the viewfinder with one eye and reading that. And I knew I was going to see myself on that damn screen in a second. I just knew it. I knew it. So we get it. Anyway, wonder what Rich thinks about Kemp calling a special session for congressional maps. I think Kemp is doing everything in his power to be the biggest scumbag in the world. I really do. How do I think Montana's going to go this time? Tester's a tough cookie to beat. Rosendale was on his way to being the strongest one to do it until he stuck his foot in his rectum. House, the at-large House race, that's going to stay Republican. So far. Remember the movie we watched with the person chewing and I said, oh, there goes Ron. Oh, man, what was that? That was a Laura comment, though. You'll love Thomas Massey. Dude wears a debt clock lapel. We've had public fights, actually, Thomas and I. Why? Because he didn't seem to understand some of the he's a little bit too libertarian for the rest of the country, but I do think he's been great on a lot of stuff. I do. And Derek, I'm telling you, I'd still, even with the problems I do have with Massey, because I think part of his brand is unelectable in the rest of the country, and not only that, I just think it's stupid. It's not real world. It's like he can get a little bit too policy wonky at times, and that may play in the classroom, and it may play at the study committee, but it doesn't play in the real world. But I'd still take, 220 of him than, 220 Don Bagans, right? Or Kay Grangers. Hey, how do you think the House and Senate rate? Oh, it was a double. Has the CBO ever been right once? Nope. Does Dean Phillips actually? Not a single time. Not a single time. Does not when you factor in what may have, the CBO was around to the CBO and some of that other bureaucracy, which they feed to you as either nonpartisan or bipartisan. It's a load of crap. Was Newt Gingrich was right about that. It's got to go, along with many of those other bureaucracies and so-called nonpartisans. it was erected in the era of the Great Society to justify those spending programs. It was not ever an oversight project to really inform lawmakers about the consequences or the impacts of their legislation. And yeah, it's done a lot of damage to the country and really does need to go. CBO should be it should be dismantled. Does Dean Phillips actually have a chance in New Hampshire if he can increase name ID? Probably not. When can Trump, I mean, somebody can do something, but he's not going to raise enough money. I guess, I don't know. We're deciding whether or not we're going to put Dean in our polling, because I'm not sure where he's going to even be able to compete at this point. When can Trump seize full control of the GOP apparatus, fire Rona? After he becomes president again, he's the de facto leader of the party, can do whatever he wants. Does he have to wait until clear? Does he have to wait clear until after the actual official nomination of the convention? No, he really needs to wait until he's elected president, and then they got to go. Nominees aren't yet the wielders of power. When the sitting president becomes the de facto leader of the party, that's when he has, really, nobody can stop him, really. What is Mark Halperin talking about? RFK being kept off ballots in key states. They're going to make it out like this mass conspiracy. The truth is, Mark is right. He was right. We talked about this on Kimberly Guilfoyle and Rob Schmidt tonight on Newsmax last week. It is. We had a show about it. What was it, Monday, Laura? If you didn't watch Monday's show, go check it out. It's not even a matter of being kept off. It's difficult for these independent candidates to even get on ballots. He's not going to get on the ballot in Georgia. He's not going to get on the ballot in Arizona. He will, though, probably get on the ballot in Pennsylvania, which is why that poll concerns me. But we'll see. But yeah, a lot of this is just a thought exercise because he's not getting on. Why does Robert Barnes think that he does not hurt Trump? I think he brought up historic figures. I don't know what historic figures is even worthy of bringing up at this point. Every campaign is different. He's not a Green Party candidate. He's not a Libertarian Party candidate. He is an independent candidate. Democrats, his support is not educated. He takes votes from Biden and Trump, roughly equal among partisans. That's not the issue. The issue is the voter that causes you to win by 20 or 30,000 votes in these Midwest states. The voters who don't like either party. The voter who doesn't consider himself to be a fan of anything. Big pharma, big government. That's the vote and where the votes are coming from is what matters. Maybe Massachusetts turns out to be the only state in the Northeast where Kennedy looks like he's going to pull some votes. Maybe Maine as well, but I don't think it'll be enough in Massachusetts, even if the UMass poll is right, to throw Massachusetts to Trump. Maine could be, but we'll see. I think that it's much more likely that Kennedy is going to take a bunch of votes in the second congressional district than he is going to take in first. I mean, you guys ever been there? Bangor, Portland? I mean, those are liberals. Liberals. They're going to rally behind Biden. It takes twice as many conservatives as he does liberals. Talking about total votes, because the percentage is roughly equal. It's a little bit more conservative, but there are twice as many conservatives than there are liberals. Almost. So he takes twice as many votes, literally. All right. Now it could change, but at the moment, this is where we are. Pete, RFK still pull this many votes close to Election Day? Pete, great question. Because honestly, I don't think so. I really don't. Don't many voters just say they will vote third party, get cold feet close to the end, and vote for the one of the big two? Yes, Pete. Yes. And I don't know about the historical stuff Robert was talking about, but the truth is, historically, 16 was one of those rare instances, along with like Nader at some point had gotten like 5% in some of these states. And of course, Ross Perot got almost 20% of the vote in 1992. But Ross Perot was more ideologically aligned with George Herbert Walker Bush. In the case of RFK, is it obvious just because he calls himself a Democrat that he's more ideologically aligned with Biden? No, it's not. And liberals, traditional liberals, are going to think he's nuts. Now, Pete, let's wait and see what happens. because a real liberal does not shit can Dennis Kucinich and install his CIA daughter-in-law. Trump Tucker would make libs leave the country. Right. They'd never do. This is what I'm saying. This is why Rona pisses me off. People like me spend our entire lives trying to explain to the American people that the system has handicaps. The media is not credible. And if you want real information to make an informed opinion, you have to go outside of that purview. And then what does she do? For donor money, for advertising money, she lends Lester Holt and that witch credibility. And what do? To make it seem fair, they toss a nugget to you. You Hewitt, the heck? You Hewitt is a dinosaur, a never Trump dinosaur. You would never see it the other way. Never. Is the Biden vote for Biden or against Trump? What a great question. So far, we haven't asked that question on every single questionnaire. See how big they get with some of the difference in hypotheticals we asked, but I think that's a great idea to put them back on. It was always against Trump, but I'm telling you, well, more so than not. And then votes for Trump are for Trump than Biden. Normally, that helps the person who says, I'm voting for Biden because I'm against Trump. That usually portends a weak campaign. So we saw that with Mitt Romney. They didn't like Mitt Romney. They were voting against Barack Obama. John Kerry. Of course, 2020 turned out to be yet once again the anomaly where that didn't matter. But any other campaign, it means it's a weak campaign and that person's going to lose because they don't have people who will crawl over hot coals or jump into a volcano or over broken glass to vote for someone they love and adore and respect and really, really support. But I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. I think we should try to find some time to put that back on the questionnaire, but it doesn't matter whether Democrats tell us that they're voting for Biden and then it's less against Trump or less against another candidate than it would be for Donald Trump. They'll just say, I'm voting for Biden if they don't really like Nikki Haley. You know what I'm saying? His for the candidate percentage will just go up. You know, they're going to vote and they're going to vote regardless. I'm telling you, it's going to be big turnout, big turnout. And the only hope is that that Republicans have is that they put up their big turnout numbers as well, because they're going to lose if they don't. What else? Anything else? That's it. All right, don't forget, public polling project, share it far and wide. And also locals. peoplespundit.locals.com. See you at 3 p.m., folks, Eastern Standard Time, Sunday. Nothing but love for you. Talking to Rust Belt Bowl. And then there was Monday something. Well, we'll talk about it. Yes. 2:35, Jack. Don't forget about Jack Human Events. See you there in 10 minutes. Orange is better.
Lies. Purple for the win in lighting.
Deuces. Halloween. Nothing but love for you folks. See you soon.